Commander Vrell stood at the viewport of Station Kepler 9, her primary eyes focused on the docking bay below, while her secondary eyes scanned the security feeds. She was tall even for a Kathran, with deep purple chitin that gleamed under the station's artificial lighting, forearms crossed in what anyone who knew her would recognize as barely contained irritation. "They are late," she muttered, her mandibles clicking in annoyance. Submander Torek, a squat, orange-skinned Bolvari, with 6 legs and an unfortunate tendency to state the obvious, waddled closer. "Perhaps their vessel encountered difficulties, Commander. Or perhaps," Vrell said slowly, turning 2 eyes toward him while keeping 2 on the viewport, "they simply do not respect Galactic Council time protocols. These Deathworlders think the universe revolves around them." The word Deathworlder was spoken with particular venom. It was the term the Council used for species that evolved on Class 12 worlds, planets so hostile that merely existing there required constant vigilance against everything from the weather to the local fauna. Earth, humanity's homeworld, was classified as a 12.7. The .7, Vrell had been told, was added after 3 separate xenobiologist teams had nervous breakdowns trying to categorize all the things that could kill you there. Humans had been part of the Galactic Council for exactly 4 standard cycles. 4 cycles of constant complaints, constant demands for exceptions to established protocols, and constant swagger. They acted like they owned the galaxy simply because they survived a planet where the rain could be acidic, the sun could burn exposed skin in minutes, and something called a hippopotamus existed. Vrell had looked up hippopotamus. She wished she had not. "They are docking now, Commander," Torek announced, his vocal sacs inflating with what might have been relief or anxiety. With Bolvari, it was hard to tell. Through the viewport, Vrell watched the human transport vessel, the Terra's Pride, settle into its berth with all the grace of a falling rock. Hydraulics hissed. Clamps engaged with metallic thinks that echoed through the station's superstructure. The airlock cycled. And then they emerged. Humans. There were 5 of them. 4 adults and 1 small one. The child, Vrell assumed, based on its height, all of them wore the standard civilian travel suits that did absolutely nothing to hide how fragile they looked. 2 legs instead of the sensible 4 or 6. 2 arms instead of 4 or 8. Skin instead of proper armor plating or protective scales. No natural weapons whatsoever. No claws, no venomous spines, no acid glands. Nothing. Soft, the lead human, a female with dark skin and short-cropped black hair, approached the receiving area where Vrell and her security detail waited. She had the characteristic binocular vision placement that made humans look perpetually focused, perpetually intense, even when they were supposedly relaxed. "Commander Vrell?" the human asked, her voice carrying that strange melodic quality human languages possessed. "I am Captain Amara Johnson. These are my crew and passengers." Vrell's mandibles clicked in acknowledgement. "Captain, welcome to Station Kepler 9. I trust your journey was without incident?" "Smooth enough." Johnson glanced at the security detail. 12 armed guards in full tactical gear, and something that might have been amusement flickered across her face. "That is quite the welcome party. Standard protocol for all arriving vessels," Vrell lied smoothly. In truth, most species received 2 guards, maybe 3. But humans required extra precaution. They were unpredictable, prone to violence, and far stronger than their soft appearance suggested. "Of course," Johnson said, and now Vrell was certain the human was mocking her. "We will need to arrange quarters for the week. My daughter Em and I are waiting for transport to New Harrington. These are our friends, the Kowalski family, heading to Europa Station." The child, Emma, peered around her mother's leg. She could not have been more than 6 standard cycles old, small even for a young human. Brown skin like her mother, but with strange golden-colored hair that seemed to defy gravity, sticking up in multiple directions. Large brown eyes that looked at everything with undisguised curiosity. Vrell felt her chatin crawl. Human children were somehow worse than human adults. At least adults had learned some measure of control, some veneer of civilization. Human children were pure chaos wrapped in soft flesh, asking questions constantly, touching things they should not touch, and somehow getting into places that should have been physically impossible to access. "Quarters will be arranged," Vrell said, forcing professionalism into her voice. However, I must remind you that Station Kepler 9 operates under strict council regulations. All visitors must comply with station law at all times. No exception. Understood, Johnson said. But her eyes had that dangerous glint again. The one that said she was thinking something Vrell would not like. The processing took 2 standard hours. Biometric scans, declaration forms, customs inspection of their minimal luggage. The Kowalski family, a man, woman, and teenage son, moved through everything with quiet efficiency. But Emma asked approximately 700 questions. Or so it felt to Vrell, who was trying very hard not to snap at a child. Why do you have 4 arms? Can you use them all at the same time? What do you eat? Do you have kids? What does your planet look like? Why is the station spinning? Is it supposed to make that noise? Can I touch your armor? Why not? Is that a gun? Why do you need guns on a station? Captain Johnson, to her credit, simply smiled and occasionally put a hand on her daughter's shoulder. And that Commander Vrell is very busy. Let her work. Finally, mercifully, they were cleared and assigned quarters in Section 7, the civilian residential area. Vrell watched them leave, feeling her stress glands finally relax. Sir, one of her security officers, a young Catherine named Prill, approached hesitantly. The human child was observed attempting to access a restricted data port in the processing area. Vrell's mandibles snapped shut so hard they clicked. What? She claimed she wanted to see pictures of the station. Captain Johnson stopped her immediately and apologized. Of course she did. Of course the chaos creature tried to hack station systems within 2 hours of arrival. This was going to be a very long week. 3 days passed without major incident. 3 days during which Vrell began to think that perhaps, just perhaps, her concerns had been overblown. Yes, the human child was constantly everywhere, chattering at anyone who would listen and many who would not, but she had not actually broken anything or caused any diplomatic disasters. Captain Johnson spent most of her time in the station's commercial district, a sprawling collection of shops, restaurants, and entertainment venues that catered to the dozens of species passing through Kepler 9. Emma was always with her, a small shadow in a bright yellow jacket that made her impossible to lose in a crowd. Vrell saw them occasionally during her patrols. Emma would wave enthusiastically every single time, as if they were old friends instead of strangers bound by bureaucratic necessity. Vrell would nod stiffly and continue walking, trying to ignore the way her secondary eyes kept tracking the child. There was something about human young that triggered protective instincts even in species that had no business feeling protective toward potential rivals. Vrell had read the xenopsychology report. Human children were deliberately designed through millions of cycles of evolution to appear vulnerable and precious to a wide range of species. Large eyes, small stature, high-pitched voices, all of it optimized to make other beings want to care for them. It was, Vrell thought darkly, probably another weapon in humanity's arsenal. On the 4th day, everything went wrong. It started in the market district. Vrell was conducting a routine patrol with Officer Prill and 2 other guards when the call came through her comm unit. Commander, we have a situation in Sector 7 Delta. Civilian disturbance, requesting backup. Vrell's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Civilian disturbances were usually drunken miners or traders arguing over prices. Nothing that required her personal attention, but the officer who called it in was Nexim, a by-the-book Jelthari who never requested backup unless absolutely necessary. On our way, Vrell said, breaking into a run that carried her through the station corridors at a speed that sent other pedestrians scrambling out of her path. Sector 7 Delta was a small plaza area with benches, decorative plants from a dozen worlds, and a fountain that recycled water in a continuous loop. It was a popular spot for families and off-duty station personnel. When Vrell arrived, she immediately saw the problem. Officer Nexim, a tall reptilian Jelthari with green scales and a ridge of spines down his back, stood with his weapon drawn. Not pointed at anyone, not yet, but out of its holster and held ready. His partner, a Bolvari named Kress, was speaking urgently into her comm unit, and there in the middle of the plaza was Emma Johnson. The human child stood perfectly still, her small body rigid with fear. Her hands were raised, palms out, in the universal gesture of surrender. Tears streaked down her face. Around her a crowd had gathered. Dozens of beings from a dozen species, all watching, all silent. "What is happening here?" Vrell demanded, striding forward. Nexim did not take his eyes off Emma. The human child was caught stealing from a merchant stall. When confronted, she became aggressive. Aggressive? Vrell looked at the tiny, terrified child. "She is 6 cycles old. She struck Merchant Ball when he attempted to retrieve the stolen merchandise. Physical assault on a council citizen." "You know the protocols, Commander." Vrell did know the protocols. Theft was a minor offense, usually handled with fines, but assault on a council citizen carried mandatory detention, regardless of the perpetrator's age. Still, this was a human child. There had to be context. "Where is the merchant?" Vrell asked. A portly Delgasi waddled forward, his forearms gesturing wildly. "Here. I am here. The creature attacked me, struck me in my feeding orifice. It could have killed me." Vrell looked at Merchant Ball's feeding orifice, a vertical slit on his torso that was currently bruised purple. Then she looked at Emma's tiny hands, still raised in surrender. "What did she steal?" Vrell asked carefully. "A nutrition pack." Ball's voice rose to an indignant squeal. "Worth 15 credits. And when I confronted her, she became violent. These Deathworlders think they can take whatever they want, do whatever they want." Emma's voice, small and shaking, cut through the murmuring crowd. "I was hungry. I did not have any money. I am sorry. I am so sorry." "Sorry is not sufficient," Ball shrieked. "I demand justice. I demand she be detained according to council law." Vrell felt every eye in the plaza turn toward her. This was a test. Everyone knew it. How would she handle a human child who had broken station law? Would she show favoritism because of humanity's growing political power? Would she enforce the law equally, regardless of species? The right choice was obvious. A child who stole because she was hungry should be returned to her guardian with a warning. Maybe a small fine. Nothing more. But Merchant Ball was technically correct about the law. And assault, even by a child, was assault. And there was something else. Something Vrell had been carrying for 4 cycles now, ever since humanity joined the council and began demanding changes, exceptions, special treatment. A resentment that had grown with every human swagger, every human assumption that their way was best. "Officer Nexim," Vrell said slowly, "detain the child until we can locate her guardian and arrange proper proceedings." Emma's eyes went wide. "No, please. I am sorry. I will pay. I will work. Please do not." Nexim moved forward, reaching for the restraints on his belt. And Emma, terrified, hungry, 6 cycles old and alone, did what any cornered creature would do. She ran, straight toward Vrell. Maybe she thought the commander would protect her. Maybe she just wanted to get away from Nexim. Maybe she was just panicking. It did not matter. What mattered was that she was running, and running was what guilty beings did, and Vrell's training took over before her conscious mind could stop it. Her primary right arm lashed out, catching the child across the face with the back of her chitin-plated hand. The crack echoed through the plaza like a gunshot. Emma went down hard, her small body hitting the deck plating with a sickening thud. She did not move. Blood pooled beneath her head, shockingly red against the gray floor. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Then the screaming started. "Medic!" someone shouted. "Someone get a medic!" Vrell stood frozen, staring at her hand, then at the crumpled form of the child. What had she done? She had not meant to, it was instinct, training. But what had she done? Officer Prill was already on her comm. "Medical emergency. Sector 7 Delta, child down, head trauma." The crowd was no longer silent. Voices rose, angry, shocked, horrified. A Tyrellian female pushed through to kneel beside Emma, checking for vital signs. "She is breathing. Pulse is weak." "Where is medical?" Vrell wanted to move, wanted to help, wanted to do something, but her body would not obey. She could only stare as medical personnel arrived, as they carefully lifted Emma's limp form onto a stretcher, as they rushed her away. Merchant Ball, she noticed with distant fury, had vanished into the crowd. "Commander." Nexim's voice was very quiet. "What do we do?" "What did they do?" A council officer had just struck a child hard enough to crack her skull. A human child. The offspring of a species that had earned its place on the Council through sheer stubborn refusal to die, no matter what the universe threw at them. A species that held grudges. A species that protected its young with legendary ferocity. "Find Captain Johnson," Vrell said, her voice hollow. "Find her now, and someone contact Council security. I need to file an incident report." "Commander," Vrell said carefully, "perhaps we should wait until we know the child's condition before—" "Now, officer." As her team scrambled to comply, Vrell looked down at her hands again. 4 perfect hands that had maintained order on this station for 12 cycles. 4 hands that had never killed, never seriously injured anyone. 4 hands, one of which was now stained with human blood. The human child might die, probably would die. Head trauma was serious for any species, but humans were so fragile, so soft. And if Emma Johnson died, then Vrell had just started a war. Captain Amara Johnson arrived at the medical bay 7 minutes later. Vrell knew this because she had been standing in the corridor outside the emergency treatment room for exactly 7 minutes, watching the medical team work through the observation window. Emma lay on the diagnostic table, still unconscious. Machines and medical personnel moved with urgent efficiency. When Johnson came through the corridor, she was not running. That was the first thing Vrell noticed. She was walking, but each step had a deliberate quality that was somehow more terrifying than if she had been sprinting. The second thing Vrell noticed was Johnson's eyes. They were not angry. They were empty. "Where is she?" Johnson asked, her voice perfectly level. "Through here." Vrell led her to the observation window. "The medical team is doing everything. Be quiet." Vrell's mandibles snapped shut. She had commanded security forces for 12 cycles. She had faced down armed pirates, quelled riots, negotiated with hostile species. She had never, not once, obeyed an order from someone outside her chain of command. But something in Captain Johnson's voice made disobedience impossible. They stood together in silence, watching the medical team work. After what felt like an eternity, the lead physician, a graceful Volante with bioluminescent skin, emerged from the treatment room. "Captain Johnson?" the physician asked gently. "Your daughter is stabilized. The cranial fracture was severe, but we have stopped the bleeding and reduced the swelling. She will require reconstructive surgery, but she should survive." Johnson's eyes closed for a brief moment. When they opened again, they were no longer empty. They were filled with something much, much worse. "Thank you, Doctor," Johnson said quietly. "May I see her?" "Of course. She is still unconscious, but you can sit with her." Johnson moved past Vrell without a word, disappearing into the treatment room. Through the window, Vrell watched her settle into a chair beside Emma's bed, reaching out to gently touch her daughter's uninjured hand. "Commander," the physician said, turning her attention to Vrell, "I must file a formal report on this incident. A child does not receive this type of injury from a fall." "Would you care to explain what happened?" Vrell told her. "All of it. The theft, the merchant's complaint, Emma running, Vrell's instinctive strike." The physician's bioluminescent patterns flickered through colors Vrell had never seen before. Shock, disgust, disbelief. "You struck a child?" the physician said slowly. "A 6-cycle-old child? It was not intentional. She was running. I reacted." "You reacted by using sufficient force to fracture her skull?" The physician's voice rose. "Commander, I have worked with human physiology extensively. Do you have any idea how much force that requires? Their bones are incredibly dense, their skulls designed to protect their oversized brains. You did not just tap her. You hit her with killing force." Vrella's chin felt suddenly too tight. "I did not intend." "Intent is irrelevant." The physician's patterns flashed angry red. "A child is severely injured because a trained security officer lost control. If she were any species but human, she would be dead. As it is, she will carry scars for the rest of her life." "I know," Vrell said quietly. "I have already initiated the incident report. I will face whatever consequences." "Oh, you will face consequences," a new voice said. Vrell turned. Another human had arrived. A tall male with graying hair and the kind of face that had seen too many things go wrong. He wore the uniform of the Council's diplomatic corps, but his insignia marked him as something more: human embassy staff. "I am Ambassador Garrett Pierce," he said, his voice carrying the same dangerous calm as Captain Johnson's. "I represent the human delegation to the Galactic Council. Commander Vrell, you are hereby suspended from duty pending formal investigation. Your officers have been instructed to escort you to secure quarters where you will remain until the Council's tribunal can convene." "I understand," Vrell said. There was nothing else to say. "Do you?" Pierce stepped closer. And despite being shorter than her, despite having only 2 arms and no natural weapons, Vrell found herself taking a step back. "Do you understand that you just assaulted the child of a council citizen? Do you understand that humans have been patient, exceptionally patient, with the way we have been treated since joining your council? Do you understand what you have done?" "It was a mistake," Vrell said, hating how weak her voice sounded. "Mistakes have consequences," Pierce said. "And this mistake? This one is going to cost you everything you have." 2 security officers appeared, humans this time, summoned by Pierce. They were polite, but firm as they escorted Vrell away from the medical bay, away from the child she had harmed, away from any chance to somehow fix what she had broken. As she walked, Vrell's mind raced. This would go before the council. There would be a tribunal, possibly criminal charges. Her career was over. Certainly. But what else? What would humanity demand as justice for this? She did not have to wonder long. 3 hours later, confined to quarters with no access to the station network, Vrell received a single message on her personal comm unit. It was audio only, and it came from a source with no identifying markers. The voice was human, male, and utterly cold. "Commander Vrell, you hurt a human child. You broke her skull, you made her bleed, and you did it because you could, because you thought we were soft, because you thought there would be no consequences." A pause. "You were wrong. The girl's name is Emma Johnson, age 6 standard cycles, and she is under human protection. What happens next is no longer about council law or council justice. This is about human law now, and human justice. You should have let her steal the nutrition pack." The message ended. Vrell sat in her quarters, chattering, crawling with primal fear she had not felt since she was a juvenile facing her first molt. Somewhere on Station Kepler 9, a human child lay unconscious, her skull fractured, her future uncertain, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, humanity was deciding exactly what price Commander Vrell would pay for putting her there. The answer, when it came, would shake the entire Galactic Council, but that was still to come. For now, Vrell could only sit in the dark and wait for the hammer to fall. The tribunal convened exactly 18 standard hours after Commander Vrell struck Emma Johnson. 18 hours that felt like 18 cycles. Vrell sat in the detention wing of Station Kepler 9, her 4 arms bound with energy restraints that hummed with barely contained power. The restraints were designed for beings much larger and more dangerous than her, the kind used for violent criminals who posed an active threat to station security. She was being treated like a monster. Perhaps she was. The door to her cell slid open with a hiss. 2 guards entered, both human, both wearing the black uniforms of council enforcement. Behind them came Ambassador Pierce, his gray hair perfect, his expression unreadable. "Time to go, Commander," Pierce said. "The council is waiting." Vrell stood, her legs unsteady. "What will happen?" Pierce smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Justice, Commander. Human justice. The kind your council has never seen before." They walked through corridors Vrell had patrolled for 12 cycles, past beings she had protected, worked with, shared meals with. Every single one turned away when they saw her. Some looked disgusted. Others looked frightened. Of her, or of what was coming? The tribunal chamber was in the station's administrative core, a large circular room with seating arranged in ascending tiers. At the center was the judgment platform, where the accused would stand before the 5 council arbiters who would decide their fate. Vrell had been in this room dozens of times, usually as a witness or security presence, never as the accused. The arbiters were already seated. 5 beings representing 5 of the council's major powers, a Kethran like herself, a Gelthari, a Valanthi, a Terrellian, and surprisingly a human. The human arbiter was a woman with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, her dark eyes sharp and calculating. She wore the formal robes of a council judge, deep blue with gold trim, and she watched Vrell with an expression that gave nothing away. The gallery was packed. Hundreds of beings, from dozens of species, all crammed in to watch. Vrell spotted Captain Johnson sitting in the front row, her face carved from stone. Beside her sat the Kowalski family, and several other humans Vrell did not recognize. Commander Vrell of Station Kepler Nine, the lead arbiter, a Tyrellian named High Judge Sorrel, spoke with the kind of voice that could silence a riot. You stand accused of assault causing grievous bodily harm against a minor, specifically Emma Johnson, human child aged 6 standard cycles. How do you plead? Vrell's mandibles clicked once. Guilty. A murmur ran through the gallery. No defense? No excuses? No claims of misunderstanding or accident? Explain, High Judge Sorrel commanded. So Vrell did. She explained the theft, the merchant's complaint, the protocols for assault on a council citizen. She explained Emma running, her own training taking over, the instinctive strike that had nearly killed a child. She did not make excuses. She did not beg for mercy. She simply told the truth. When she finished, the gallery was silent. High Judge Sorrel conferred quietly with the other arbiters. Finally, he spoke. This tribunal recognizes Commander Vrell's admission of guilt. However, given the severity of the crime, victim impact testimony will be heard before sentencing. Captain Amara Johnson, please approach. Captain Johnson rose smoothly and walked to the testimony platform beside the judgment area. She looked small next to the towering Tyrellian judge, but somehow that made her seem more dangerous. Not less. Captain Johnson, High Judge Sorrel said gently, your daughter Emma was gravely injured. Please tell this tribunal about the impact of Commander Vrell's actions. Johnson took a breath. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but there was something underneath it, something that made the air in the room feel heavier. Emma is 6 years old. She likes drawing pictures of spaceships. She wants to be a xenobiologist when she grows up so she can study all the interesting species in the galaxy. She asks approximately 10,000 questions per day, and she laughs at jokes that are not funny because she thinks it makes people happy. Johnson paused. Yesterday Emma was hungry. We had just arrived on this station, and our funds had not transferred yet. She saw food. She took it. She is 6. She does not fully understand currency or property law. She understands hunger. When confronted, she panicked. She ran toward Commander Vrell, possibly for protection, possibly just to escape. And Commander Vrell, a trained officer, struck her hard enough to fracture her skull in 3 places. Johnson's voice grew harder. Emma is currently in the medical bay. She woke up 4 hours ago. She cannot remember her own name. The doctors say the memory loss might be temporary. Might be. They also say she will need reconstructive surgery on her cheekbone and jaw. The scarring will be permanent, and she is terrified of anyone with chitin plating now. Which means she is terrified of roughly 30% of the species in this galaxy. The gallery erupted in shocked whispers. A child who wanted to be a xenobiologist, now afraid of other species. The tragedy of it was almost poetic. What would you ask of this tribunal, Captain? High Judge Sorrel asked. Johnson turned to look directly at Vrell, and her eyes held nothing but cold calculation. I would ask for proportional justice. Commander Vrell struck my daughter with enough force to kill most species. Emma survived because humans are built to survive. Our bones are dense. Our healing factor is exceptional. Our pain tolerance is legendary. She paused. But that does not make it acceptable. That does not make it right. Commander Vrell needs to understand what it means to harm a human child. And how would you suggest the tribunal facilitate this understanding? The human arbiter asked, speaking for the first time. Her voice was soft but carried clearly through the chamber. Johnson smiled, and every being in the room felt their survival instincts scream warnings. I would suggest we show her. Ambassador Pierce stood from the gallery. If the tribunal permits, the human delegation has prepared evidence that we believe is relevant to sentencing considerations. High Judge Sorrel's tendrils twitched with what might have been curiosity or concern. Proceed. Pierce gestured, and the room's central holographic display activated. An image appeared, floating 3 meters tall in the center of the chamber. It was Earth, blue and white and green, swirling with clouds, achingly beautiful. This is humanity's homeworld, Pierce said, his voice taking on the cadence of a lecturer. Class 12.7. The .7 was added because our planet is, by Council standards, a nightmare. He gestured, and the image zoomed in. These are our ocean. They cover 70% of the surface. They contain life forms that grow to 30 meters in length, that can dive to depths that would crush most spacecraft, that hunt in packs with sophisticated communication. The image shifted. A great white shark, jaws open, rows of serrated teeth gleaming. This creature can smell blood from 5 kilometers away. It has been hunting in Earth's oceans for over 400 million cycles. Pierce smiled. We swim with them. For fun, the gallery murmured. Vrell's chatin crawled. The image changed again. A grizzly bear rearing up on hind legs, easily 3 meters tall, claws extended. Land predators. This one weighs 600 kilograms and can run at 50 kilometers per hour. It can decapitate a human with a single strike. Pierce paused for effect. There are approximately 55,000 of these on Earth. We camp in their territory. We consider it entertainment. Another image. A saltwater crocodile, massive jaws closing on what looked like a large mammal, bite force of 3.7 thousand pounds per square inch. Can hold its breath for 2 hours. Waits in the water for prey. Pierce's voice grew quieter. We have learned to live alongside these. All of these. And thousands more. The images continued. Box jellyfish. King cobra. Poison dart frog. Blue-ringed octopus. Each one more lethal than the last. Humanity, Pierce said slowly, evolved in an environment that was actively trying to kill us. Every day, every moment, we learned to be tough. We learned to heal fast. We learned to protect our young with absolute, uncompromising ferocity. Because if we did not, our species would have gone extinct before we ever built our first city. He turned to face Vrell directly. Do you know what happens when someone harms a human child on Earth, Commander? Vrell's mandibles would not open. She could only stare. Let me show you. Pierce gestured again. The holographic display changed. Now it showed news footage, grainy and old, but clear enough. A human male being led away in restraints by law enforcement. The text overlay was in English, but the station's translator made it readable. Man arrested for child abuse. Victim hospitalized with severe injuries. The next image showed a courtroom. The same man standing before a judge. The next image showed a prison. High walls. Guard towers. Barbed wire. 20 years, Pierce said. That is what human law demands for harming a child. 20 years in a facility where the other inmates, many of them violent criminals themselves, will make every single day a laid nightmare for someone who hurt a child. He paused. Because even human criminals have standards. The display changed again. This time it showed something different. A graveyard. A simple headstone. The name on it was weathered, barely readable. This is what happens when someone kills a human child, Pierce said quietly. This is the grave of a man who 30 cycles ago caused the death of a 5-year-old girl in a vehicle accident. He served his legal sentence. He was released. Pierce's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. 3 days later, the child's father found him. There was not enough left to bury. The gallery was absolutely silent. The father was arrested. He was tried. He was convicted of murder. Pierce looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every being present. The jury deliberated for 11 minutes. The judge gave him the minimum sentence possible under law. He served 3 years and was released. He is now considered a hero in his community. High Judge Sheikh Sarail's tendrils had gone completely still. Ambassador Pierce, are you suggesting that human justice operates outside of legal frameworks? No, High Judge. I am explaining that human justice has 2 frameworks. There is the law, written and enforced. And then there is the understanding, the unspoken code that every human knows from birth. You can break many laws, you can steal, you can fight, you can even kill under certain circumstances. But you never ever harm a child. Pierce's voice hardened. And if you do, then the law is the least of your concerns, because you will answer to every human who hears about it. This is barbaric, the Cathran arbiter said, his mandibles clicking in agitation. You are describing vigilante justice. Mob rule. Call it what you want, Captain Johnson said, standing again. But understand this. Emma is my daughter. She is 6 years old. She was hungry, and Commander Vrell nearly killed her for stealing food worth 15 credits. Her voice rose. 15 credits. That is less than I spend on a single cup of coffee. And she cracked my daughter's skull for it. The gallery erupted. Beings shouting in agreement, in outrage, in fear. The arbiters called for order, but it took several minutes for the chamber to quiet. Finally, High Judge Sorrell spoke. This tribunal will deliberate. Commander Vrell, do you have anything to say in your own defense? Vrell looked at the faces in the gallery. At the arbiters. At Captain Johnson. At Ambassador Pierce. At the images still floating in the holographic display showing Earth's predators, Earth's dangers, Earth's absolute refusal to allow its children to be harmed. No, Vrell said quietly. I have nothing to say. I am guilty. I accept whatever judgment this tribunal decides. The arbiters conferred for exactly 7 minutes. When they returned to their positions, High Judge Sorrell's expression was grave. Commander Vrell, this tribunal finds you guilty of assault causing grievous bodily harm against a minor. The sentence is as follows. You are stripped of rank and position, effective immediately. You will serve 20 standard cycles in a council detention facility. You will pay restitution to the Johnson family in the amount of 500,000 credits, and you will be permanently barred from holding any uneasy authority within council space. 20 cycles. Vrella's legs nearly gave out. 20 cycles in detention. More than she had served as commander. But the human arbiter was not finished. She stood, her robes rustling. Additionally, the human delegation has invoked Article 47 of the Council Charter. A collective gasp went through the gallery. Article 47 was almost never used. It allowed any member species to demand additional cultural-specific justice for crimes against their citizens, provided such justice did not violate the victim's rights. The human delegation, the arbiter continued, has requested that Commander Vrell be remanded to human custody for a period of 1 standard cycle before beginning her detention sentence. During this cycle, she will reside on Earth in a human facility under human supervision. She will experience firsthand human justice and human culture. This tribunal approves the request. No, Vrell whispered. But please. Anything but that. A Class 12.7 Deathworld, where everything was designed to kill, where the very air was hostile to most species, where humans lived and thrived and somehow found it normal. 1 cycle on Earth would be worse than 20 in a council detention facility. Ambassador Pierce smiled. Oh, Commander, you are going to learn so much. 3 days later, Vrell stood in the cargo bay of a human transport ship, the Retribution, watching Station Kepler 9 shrink in the viewport. She was bound, guarded, and utterly terrified. Captain Johnson was on the ship, so was Emma. Recovered enough to travel, but still bearing the visible signs of Vrell's strike. The child's face was swollen, bruised, purple, and yellow. Medical nanites worked beneath her skin, repairing damage at the cellular level, but the process would take weeks. Emma had looked at Vrell once, during boarding. Just once. And then she had hidden behind her mother, trembling. Vrell had done that. She had turned a curious, friendly child into a frightened, broken thing. The journey to Earth took 6 standard days through council-approved transit routes. 6 days during which Vrell was confined to a small cabin with a single viewport. 6 days of watching human crew members go about their duties with casual efficiency that spoke of absolute competence. They were not cruel. They brought her food compatible with her biology. They checked on her welfare. They answered questions when she asked. But they were not friendly either. There was a coldness in every interaction, a distance that made it clear she was cargo, not a guest. On the 7th day, Earth appeared in the viewport. Vrell had seen the holographic images during the tribunal. They had not prepared her for the reality. The planet was stunningly beautiful. Blue oceans, white clouds, green and brown continents. It looked peaceful, gentle, safe. It was a lie. Beautiful. Is it not? Captain Johnson stood in the cabin doorway, Emma beside her. The child peeked around her mother's leg, curious despite her fear. Yes, Vrell admitted. It will kill you in about 10,000 different ways, Johnson said cheerfully. But we call it home, and for the next cycle so will you. The transport descended through Earth's atmosphere, and Vrell watched in horrified fascination as the details resolved. The vast cities sprawling across the landscape, enormous agricultural zones, infrastructure that spanned continents, and everywhere, vegetation, green and wild and completely uncontrolled. They landed at a facility outside a city called Denver in a region called North America. The facility was surrounded by high walls, guard towers, and security that would have impressed even council standards, but it was not a prison. "This is a rehabilitation center," Johnson explained as they disembarked, "specifically for beings who have committed crimes against children. You will spend your cycle here, learning about human culture, human values, and human justice. You will attend classes, you will perform community service, you will meet with victims and their families, and you will understand completely and thoroughly what you did wrong." Vrell was processed with bureaucratic efficiency. Biometric scans, medical evaluation, psychological assessment, assignment of quarters. The quarters were small but comfortable. A sleeping platform, a sanitation area, a desk with data access, a single window that looked out over mountains in the distance. Mountains. On Earth, mountains were not just geological features. They were ecosystems filled with predators, poisonous plants, and weather patterns that could kill the unprepared. And humans climbed them. For fun. The first week was orientation. Vrell attended classes taught by human instructors who explained Earth's history, culture, and legal systems. She learned about human reproduction, how vulnerable human children were, how long it took for them to mature compared to most species. She learned that humans typically carried their young inside their bodies for 9 months, then spent years caring for helpless infants who could not walk, feed themselves, or even control their own waste. Human children, the instructor explained. Older woman named Dr. Helen Reeves, with kind eyes and an iron voice, represent approximately 18 standard cycles of investment. 18 cycles of feeding, teaching, protecting, nurturing. When you harm a human child, you are not just harming that individual. You are attacking 18 cycles of parental sacrifice. You are threatening the survival of our species. Do you understand? Vrell understood. The second week she met other residents of the facility. There were only 6 others, all non-human, all convicted of crimes against children. A Bulvari who had neglected his human stepchild. A Gelthari who had struck a student. A Volanti who had endangered minors through criminal negligence. They all shared the same haunted expression, the same understanding that they had crossed a line that should never be crossed. The third week, victim impact sessions began. Vrell sat in a small room with soft lighting and comfortable seating. Across from her sat a human couple, middle-aged, their eyes red from crying. "Our son was 7, the woman said quietly. "He was playing in the park. But Catherine, not you, but someone like you, someone who did not understand human children, grabbed him too hard when he would not stop asking questions. Broke his arm in 3 places. Our son screamed for 2 hours. The man said. He was terrified. He thought he was going to die. He is 12 now. He still has nightmares." They told Vrell their story. Every detail, every moment of pain, every therapy session, every tear, and Vrell listened. More families came, more stories, some worse than what Vrell had done, some not as severe. All of them devastating. By the 4th week, Vrell could barely sleep. The stories haunted her. The faces of the children haunted her. Emma's bruised face haunted her most of all. The 5th week brought community service. Vrell was assigned to work in a human elementary school, helping with maintenance and administrative tasks. She was never alone with children, never in a position of authority, but she saw them, hundreds of human children, laughing, playing, learning, asking questions, so many questions. They were curious about her. What was she? Where was she from? Why did she have 4 arms? Was her planet fun? One little girl, maybe 5 cycles old, asked if she could touch Vrell's chatin. Vrell had frozen, terrified of hurting another child, but the supervising teacher nodded permission. The girl's hand was so small, so soft. She patted Vrell's arm gently and giggled. "You feel neat. Like my toy dinosaur." Vrell had excused herself and cried in the restroom for 20 minutes. The 6th week, Captain Johnson visited. She brought Emma. Vrell had not seen the child since arriving on Earth. Emma looked better. The swelling was gone. The bruises had faded. The medical nanites had done their work. But there was a scar now. A thin line along her cheekbone that would never fully disappear. "Hello, Commander," Johnson said, her voice neutral. "Captain." Vrell could barely speak. "Emma, I am so sorry. I am so sorry." Emma hid behind her mother for a moment. Then slowly she stepped forward. "Dr. Reeves says you are learning about human kids," Emma said, her voice small but steady. "She says you did not understand. She says you are trying to be better." "I am," Vrell said, her voice breaking. "I am trying. Every day I am so sorry for what I did to you." Emma studied her with those large brown eyes. Then she did something that made Vrell's world tilt. She extended her small hand. "My mom says forgiveness is important," Emma said. "She says holding on to anger makes you sick inside." "I do not want to be sick inside." Vrell stared at the offered hand. Such a small thing. Such a fragile thing. She reached out very carefully with one hand. She let Emma's small fingers close around her much larger ones. "Thank you," Vrell whispered. "Thank you." Emma smiled. Just a little. Then she stepped back to her mother's side. "She is still afraid of Catherine's," Johnson said quietly. "That will take time to heal if it heals at all. But she wanted to see you. She wanted to try." "She is braver than I am," Vrell said. "She is human," Johnson said simply. "We protect our children so they can grow into protectors themselves. That is how our species survived. That is how we will continue to survive." They left soon after. Vrell watched them go, and something inside her chest, something she had not even known was broken, felt like it might someday heal. The cycle ended. Vrell stood in the same landing facility where she had arrived, preparing to transfer to the Council detention facility where she would serve the remaining 19 cycles of her sentence. Dr. Reeves came to see her off. "You have made remarkable progress, Commander. I hope you will carry what you have learned with you." "I will," Vrell promised. "Every day. I will never forget." "Good." Dr. Reeves handed her a datapad. "This contains educational materials about child development across species. Study it. Share it. When you are released from detention, you will have opportunities to teach others what you have learned. Do not waste them." "I will not." The transport was waiting. Vrell boarded, took her assigned seat and watched through the viewport as Earth began to recede. One cycle on a death world. One cycle learning about human children, human culture, human justice. She had thought it would break her. Instead, it had rebuilt her. 20 cycles later, former Commander Vrell stood before the Galactic Council's diplomatic assembly, a gathering of representatives from every member species. She was older now. Her chitin had dulled slightly with age. Her movements were slower, more careful, but her voice was strong. "I come before this assembly," she said, her words broadcast to billions across Council space, "to speak about a crime I committed 20 cycles ago. I struck a human child. I nearly killed her. I did so out of ignorance, prejudice, and a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to harm a child of any species." The assembly was silent. Emma Johnson, now 26 standard cycles old, sat in the visitors' gallery. She was a xenobiologist, just as she had dreamed. The scar on her cheek was visible, a permanent reminder. She was smiling. "The human delegation could have demanded my execution," Vrell continued. "By their cultural standards, by their laws, I had earned death. But they did not kill me. They educated me. They showed me what I had done wrong and gave me the tools to never do it again." She paused. "And then they forgave me. Not immediately, not easily, but eventually." She looked directly at Emma. "Dr. Johnson and I now work together, teaching council members about cross-species interaction, particularly regarding children. We have developed protocols that have reduced incidents like mine by 93% across council space." Vrell's mandibles clicked softly. "Humans are called Deathworlders because they survived a planet that tried to kill them every single day. But that is not what makes them dangerous. What makes them dangerous is their capacity for both absolute vengeance and absolute mercy. They will protect their children with legendary ferocity. But if you show remorse, If you show willingness to change, they will help you become better than you were. The assembly began to applaud, slowly at first, then building. Vrell descended from the podium. Emma met her at the base of the stairs. "Good speech," Emma said, grinning. "Very dramatic, very you. I learned from the best," Vrell replied. "Your mother wrote half of it." They walked together through the assembly hall. An unlikely pair. The former commander and the child she had nearly killed. Now colleagues. Now friends. "You know," Emma said thoughtfully, "I used to have nightmares about that day. About the pain. About being scared." "I am sorry," Vrell said automatically. 20 cycles of apology had made it reflex. "I know. But here is the thing. The nightmares stopped when I realized something." Emma looked up at her with those large brown eyes. "You made a terrible mistake. But you owned it. You faced it. You changed because of it. That is what humanity is really about. Not the violence or the vengeance. It is the second chances. The belief that people can be better. Your species is remarkable," Vrell said quietly. "Yeah," Emma smiled. "We really are. Now come on. We have a presentation about gel theory child development in 20 minutes, and you know how cranky you get when we are late." They walked on, and behind them the Galactic Council continued its session. No one who attended that day ever forgot the lesson. You do not harm children. Not human children. Not any children. Because if you do, you will face consequences that extend far beyond any law, any tribunal, any sentence. You will face the human understanding that some lines must never be crossed. And if you are very, very fortunate, you will be given the chance to understand why. Commander Vrell had been fortunate. She spent the rest of her life making sure others understood, so they would never need to learn the hard way. As for Emma Johnson, she became one of the most respected xenobiologists in Council history, specializing in the study of how different species protect and nurture their young. And on her cheek, visible in every lecture, every presentation, every photograph, was a thin scar, a reminder, a warning, a promise. Humanity protects its children, always.